what's it called? There's like something called folk physics, where there's just like an intuitive sense of how we presume things should work. Like, if you drop a heavier object next to a lighter object, you presume the heavier object would fall faster, and we just have this intuition. And then Galileo tested it out off the Leaning Tower of Pisa, and unintuitively, actually, no, a heavy object and a lighter object, they fall at the same rate. Um, and there's something like folk phenomenology. So like like the beginner um, part of assuming how subjective experience is constructed, and then we look into that. Well, it's in my mind. Well, where's my mind? Right? What's the delineation partition between where the mind is and where not the mind is? And then you look for that. And yeah, I love that reflection of how you if you attend to the space through the different senses, how that changes our sense of the space and relationship, and how like ambiguous it can be, and how flexible our sense of space is. So, which is quite revealing of the like, um, it's not one size, and then what affects the sizes. I actually think vision alone uh, doesn't create as much of a 3D depth to experience. Like you actually need its interaction with somatic sensation that provides the like texture mapping and the pop and the depth. Otherwise, like vision alone, like because of how binocular vision works, there's a little bit of like judging of angle and depth and such, but it's really the like the body mapping, but then the body mapping sort of like projected out in the environment that adds a lot more pop or something to explore. Uh, Yeah. No, totally, totally. Exactly. So I think the thing how the way we can gauge space is it has to be relativistically, like comparing spaces or places or things to one another. There's no objective space without comparison, relative to something else. So, that can be like the real question. You imagine an orange, like what gives you the sense of where that is? You've got to be relativizing it from somewhere to have a potential answer for that. And maybe for most people, this is why they're tempted to place like thoughts and stuff, mental images, imagination, like behind the head or back the head, is because it's triggering very subtle like prickles of sensations in the head. And so you have mental image, and then you have an associated set coupled sensation that now gives a relative like spacing of where you could do that. But if you don't make that connection, or otherwise, like people are very tempted to go like, it's just a different realm, like it's totally disconnected and in a different dimension than the rest of like experience and space and stuff like that. So yeah, I think the interrelation of the senses constructs like higher dimensional space in experience. So um, type one space is when you have a phenomenon or a gestalt or like a mind object appear, um, just of one sense modality. It could be a sensation, it could be a visual cue, um, and it like existing in its like on its own in a way. It's not coupling, it's not sparking any other sense modalities, and it's not integrated into a sort of bigger experience space. And these are just like, the flashes of mental images or um subtle sort of intuition or sensation of which you don't know where to place it, and maybe you caught it very quickly. And you can't really tell how big it is because you've got nothing to judge its relative size, with. And so we can catch phenomena in what I call type 1 space. So then type 2 space is where you've got two phenomena, and like what you count as a phenomena depends how the mind chunks things into like different objects. So at some point, then we're perceiving two phenomena, but of the same sense modality. And then you can like relativize, like, oh, this sensation is like down and to the left of this sensation, or in a visual cue, or something like that, or sounds. Um, but it's still, but both of these are still of the same sense modality. But then once we start adding in another sense modality, so now we say we had like vision, and now we add in somatic sensations, you can now construct a more complex like 3D experience space, or even a manifold, which has like different type spaces within it, relative, like across dimensions, across sense modalities, now comparing each other. So then that's what I call type 3 space. And so you can see this sort of like build up and construction leads to um yeah, more complex versions of space. And so like the 3D experience space. So some sensations, some aspects of phenomena, we're just catching at these different types of levels of space, and they're like less integrated in with the rest of the phenomena, and they're seemingly like by themselves and stuff like that. Yeah, that's one way I'm like making sense of experience. To be able to access type 1 space, to be able to catch phenomena, so of all the sense modalities, of the main ones, hearing, seeing, feeling, um, in type 1 space before they've been relativized to other phenomena in their same sense category and interacting with the other senses as well, is just it'll really facilitate the emptiness insight of their sort of insubstantiality. Like, oh, is that it? It's like it's just this kind of bit of information, um, and that is the case for anything. Anything in experience could be caught at type 1 space. Dare I say anything? I'm going to say most things for now. There's probably some exceptions. Like that require actually more complexity to exist, to come online. But lots of things, you catch them at the type 1 level, then you're seeing how, oh, it's just like a fabrication and constructed, and it appeared and disappeared, and it wasn't it. You're catching it before it ever gets like reified to a degree that would is very hard to not be confused of its like objectivity, that this really is a thing. You're sort of catching it at an earlier stage, and it's like, oh, it's clearly just an emergent, um, ephemeral phenomenon. Yeah. Right. This is just a really good line of inquiry to go explore for yourself. Yeah. Um, I can tell you like what I think. I mean, I think space is basically an essential quality of all conscious experience. So all experiences have some spatial dimension to them, some spatial temporal dimension to them, but it can be very, 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 very quaint. So, for example, seventh jhana is essentially you're catching the signal that is saying nothing. So it's an active signal in experience, and the message on that, written on that phenomenon, is nothing. Like it's saying nothing, and you're catching that at type 1 space, right? So one sense modality before it's like relativized to other sense modalities, or another sensation. And you're going to catch this in somatic sensations, type 1 space. And it's like this singularity. It's like the smallest, finest, like singularity point. But it doesn't feel dense and contracted. It feels actually really, really light, because it's like you've released so much, you've actually released the sense of like a bigger extended space. But even that, right, that singularity point of nothingness, seventh jhana, still has very, very minute, like, width to it. It's like on the Planck scale of experience. Um, Yeah, so I think it is like an essential feature of all conscious experience. So, we can just say that, and then wherever you take that in terms of a type, a space that if you presume there's a space that exists outside of conscious experience, um, go explore whatever you think about that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I think about like how our sense of a body schema affects our um sense of a space and the boundaries of ourselves. So what we take on as being part of our body. So like when you're driving a car, your body schema essentially becomes the car, and you have a feel for how big you are in the car. And then if you're driving a new car that's a different size, it takes a while to adapt that kind of schema and sense. And yeah, if you interesting things can happen where you go to sleep, and then or if you spend enough time in contact with the bed, you just like absorb the bed as now part of your body schema, and that your sense of space, and all kinds of weird things can happen. There's like astral projection in that liminal sleep wake space where you can like pull yourself out of your body, and now you feel like you're just like floating around in space, but then you can like kind of come into harsh boundaries in ways, and like all kinds of distortions. And yeah, it makes me think of um, where the formless jhanas go. So essentially, that's when your a sense of a body schema, bounded body schema, has gone offline. And so, like you're saying, so when you have your eyes open, you're mapping the size of the room you're in. When you close your eyes, you still have a sense of that size of the room. But then after a while of not updating that by keeping your eyes closed, it fades out, which then maybe changes the sense of the size of the space you're in. Um, and the same goes for your sense of the body schema. So getting into the formless jhanas is about being able to take attention off of, not feed with attention, not reify this sense of the outline of the body or the proprioception. And eventually, if you stop attending to that, that falls out of experience, and then that reveals a different space. In the same way, like you just don't open your eyes and don't attend to the environment around you, then that model falls out of experience eventually. Wicked questions. I love it. So let me go in reverse order. Um, what I kind of want to say is like, yeah, welcome to recognition of emptiness with the just like open possibilities and the not finding specific answers. I think there's, uh, well, one thing is like I really value good epistemics, so sense making well, and of which like the kind of the rational mindset is um, it tends to be like a phase and a period like of development people can pass through. Some people get stuck at it. Some people have more leaning to it. Some people never develop it. I think it has its uses. It also has its limits. I think the intellect is to be integrated in with the rest of phenomenological exploration, spiritual investigation, altered states, whatever have you. Like, why can't we um, do sort of good reasoning and epistemics um, with all bring that with all of us. It's true that sort of some mindsets and modes of investigation are not compatible with certain states of mind. Like if you want to get into kind of the more mystical, magical types of experiences, you have to have a kind of more looseness and openness, which basically we're talking about different ways of attending, different kind of types of attention, and a sort of reductionistic, narrow, single pointed focus attention is not amenable to certain states of mind. So the narrow, reductionistic, like linear sequencing type of attention is like more amenable with a rationalistic, analytical, philosophizing way of being, which is interesting and revealing in its own ways. But if you want to get into kind of more yeah, mystical, magical types of um, ontologies, you got to maybe take a more looser, entertaining way of attending. Um, Another thing, I think there's a correlation with somatic degree of somatic contraction and sense of certainty around beliefs and propositions. So when someone comes to a point of certainty, like, yes, this is the answer, absolutely objectively in all things and all times, I think it's going to correlate with a tight contraction and somewhere in their body, of which if they were to investigate more, it would loosen. And this is another a place where like I come to is I just don't even see the feasibility of a kind of theory of everything where there's like one perspective that could account for the whole. I always see like partial perspectives which can never, they always have their blind spots, their edges. So um, I say that. Another thing I kind of uh, uh, have come to is if we're trying to suffer less, and suffering relates to degree of somatic contraction. There's a kind of phase shift that I went through where all somatic contraction sort of released to a point where they could never contract ever fully to a past a certain threshold, which would correlate with having the sense of certainty about something. So then now, because the associated somatic contractions with beliefs and propositions can't ever contract to this degree again, it leaves my mind in a state of just like kind of open, general, probabilistic weighting of different beliefs relative to each other, but never like a certainty. Um, uh, yeah, yeah, it's lessened my suffering, and I'm tempted to say it is. It also makes sense. It's also like compatible with like reasoning through things to sort of more more actually, and sort of doing sort of more loops in the mind in ways. It's sort of going on a investigation journey further than before. No, yeah, I totally get you. I think on these things, um, like applying thinking in terms of theory of mind and different sort of stages of development, and just having a sympathy that others have different have minds that are configured in different ways, and you can't change that about them. And then also, like, I guess, we want to feel connected to people who see the world in a similar way as we do. And so factoring that in and orienting and trying to find those people, but also having um, like acceptance that we're never ever gonna meet eye to eye with everyone and every point. But maybe, yeah, the kind of like strong cohesion around like a strong, yeah, belief system like Christianity could be like a big thing, and we find is it too big of a deal? And then also, there can be um Christians or people in any kind of religious denomination, any, but sort of the broad big religions, um at all kinds of different places of development and sort of spiritual maturity or whatever, cognitive maturity, different intelligences. I'm not saying those are all the same thing. Yeah, and you sort of find your people, but I really know what you mean about the. You start doubting yourself. Well, like, hang on, I'm sort of thrown into this like open, like I'm not sure of anything, and then you hear some people have such strong conviction. It's like, fuck, should I have that, or you know? Well, I think that's another like interesting thing we are trying to a big theme thing we are trying to reconcile I see sort of in this meditative development is our want for a sense of certainty, and yet also a want to be open, and where those seem like at odds with each other. Because I really think the sense of certainty, it actually comes with contraction. Like, yeah, and yet this other. So learning how can you be okay with a radical unopenness, and like it's this integration of the unknown, like actually kind of the unknown is built in, it's a feature, not a bug, and you can't ever fully fill it in. And yeah, like learning to be okay with that. It's like I think with love, it's like that openness, vulnerability, receptivity also can put you in a sort of scary, dangerous place. But it's like, how can we learn to do that and be in safe places where we can have our hearts open, and like, but we don't want to get hurt, and then we close off. And it's this, how do we solve that equation and manage those trade-offs? Yeah, yeah, it's the $1 billion question. Um, so with that, I mean, I would, yeah, treat it as like a journey. The exploration again, like we had this idea of like, oh, I got to come to a definitive answer, then boom, it's solved. Could put that aside, move on. Maybe some things work like that. But okay, in the question, is it all in my mind? So to answer part of that question, to answer it, to come to an answer to it, you got to understand what mind is. And so then, is it all in my mind? Well, where's the mind? What am I considering mind, not mind? How do I find the limits in the mind? What's in the mind, outside the mind? Right. Well, how are you defining mind here? I wrote an article that had like a line in it. It's something like, hang on. The degree to which you believe slash perceive to be in contact with something that is outside of your mind, including that you have a mind, is the degree to which you are not enlightened, by some definitions of the word enlightenment. What I mean by mind here is people have different ideas, different definitions of mind. That there is like, I guess, I mean, I really like this word. There's this phenomenological presentation, right? There are sights and sounds and sensations. And then mind is like the the culmination of all of those. That there is those. There's phenomenological presentation, right? There are phenomena. Now, I think one way to really sort of close the loop here. So, when we have our understanding of reality in this construction, it requires devising, making dualities, right? If we suggest something, if we just suggest there is a mind, we're tacitly presuming now there's something that's not mind. Even to say like, oh, this conceiving consideration, this phenomenological presentation, which means like, is there something that's not that? Yeah, there's ways in which like quandaries of ours stop being a quandary or an issue when we sort of like close a loop in a way, or we dissolve a duality, where we thought like a philosophic hard problem, like the hard problem of consciousness, is when there's seemingly this insurmountable gap where we don't understand how we can get from one set of things to another set of things. We can't find a bridge of how like this comes about to explain this. That there is consciousness, there is experience. Maybe I use mind in a synonymous way here. Why? How does that come about? how do the other things like relate to the construction of consciousness? And there's just no way to get from seemingly no way to get this insurmountable gap, no way to get from neurons firing or um what's the other popular like theory? Um what's the benzene rings and the the tubes? What is it called? Yeah, microtubules, right? Microtubules and any kind of like explanation like that to this phenomenal experience of sensations and sounds and colors and stuff like that. Um, when we feel into these questions, this is kind of the funny part is again we'll find these like hard problems. We'll find a somatic contraction as well, and it's like when you this is where like the investigation goes. It's kind of funny is like you'll be working on like a quandary. It's like, oh, what is that? Like, how do I resolve this? How do I resolve this? And it's going to correlate with some somatic contraction. And then when you release that contraction, sometimes it kind of reveals like an answer. Other times you sort of see like from a new perspective because you've it's almost like information like can't pass through from this side to this side because there's this contraction. But when you like release that, now the information passes and you get a new perspective and you're like, oh, it wasn't the paradox or an insurmountable hard problem that I thought it was. Now I'm seeing like a larger context in which, okay, it all makes sense and everything in its place. And then other times, because you release that contraction, you don't necessarily get an answer, but you stop thinking about the question and you move on. You're just like, oh, I don't know. I don't know. I don't even like think about that question anymore. Um, so that's funny. Sorry, another thing I want to add. Sorry, I have lots of thoughts on this. Um, this is a really deep one. Like mind, and is there anything, right? So the $1 trillion question: is there anything outside of the mind, or is it all mind? There's something to connecting, and I wrote an article on this. Thing, the very notion of thing, our comprehension that there are things, a thing, is mind derived itself. Like there's a subtle when we evoke the notion of things, anything, whatever thing you want, but anything, thing itself, there's something we're referencing in experience. That's part of phenomenal conscious experience. There's never been evidence of thing independent from a phenomenal experience. So and thing could be like a concrete noun, but it can be like applied to like more abstract, looser, ephemeral substances or whatever, however vague you want to go. Still consideration of a thing existing. Like in the way that we understand color, it doesn't really make sense to talk about color independent of a mind. Like, how could you have orange if there's no perception of like the qualia of orange? I'm not talking about photon frequencies, ranges. Color independent of perception of color. So you get that logic, right? That logic applies to the notion of thing as well. It even applies to thing. Does it make sense to talk about if you follow me there? Um, and then you can do meditations on, and I wrote this article about it. Meditations on trying to see the emptiness of thing and catch thing at type 1 space to really see it appear and disappear. And it's like, oh, it's insubstantiality. And there I like isolated what I call the pure concept of thing. And then you realize like, oh, cool, I caught thing itself. And then this tag of thingness, is going to be in all things. So if you get to the root of thingness itself and find it empty, my theory is that if you could do that, you could one-shot yourself into getting understanding the emptiness of everything. Yeah. Yeah, sweet. I like. Yeah, again with this, there's no like perfect explanation, but ways of fitting and how things relate to each other, and the nature of like co-arising phenomena. So when this arises, that arises. Something in focused attention can contextualize via the backdrop of peripheral awareness. No, um, I was going to give this example of like, there's no word in the dictionary that means anything independent of the other words. And so you need the other words to relate to each other. And like, I mean, this is also what I relate to with like the insight of the centerlessness is sort of getting out of reductionism. So we don't like, we're not drilling down to like, oh, there's one thing that started it all. We see how like things interrelate and require each other and bidirectionality of, yeah, mind, phenomena, mind. And yeah, the thing about space, like not sure space exists. Well, maybe the kind of caveat that we can always give is the seemingness of things. Like it just seems spacious. It seems orange. Everything seems orange to me with these glasses on. But is it really? And that question, like, oh, it seems real. I'm having the experience of certainty, the experience of doubt, the experience of confusion, the seemingness. Um, yeah. Um, anything else? Otherwise, I'll explain the hand thing. Cool. Okay. Yeah. Thank you guys for sticking around and hope this is like interesting, entertaining enough. Um, okay. So the hand thing investigation is really interesting. So the question was like, you pinch your hand like this, and you're looking at the palm of your hand. The sensation on the back of your hand, if you're only looking at the palm of your hand, where is that sensation happening? Is that sensation in the visual screen, right? And like, how do you know where that sensation is? Does this even seem like an interesting question? Like, do you guys get it? The sort of the initial question itself like seems trivial. Like, oh yeah, like the sensation is on the back of my hand. I know where to place it, where it's existing. But then if we take a real like inquire into it more and just like visually, how are we actually like geolocating where that sensation is happening, even though we can't see the sensation? Well, what I think is information can like travel within the same sense modality, so that to know that the sensation on the back of your hand, like where it has to be relativized to the fact that we kind of know where it is. It has to be, but we can't see it. It has to be relativized to other somatic sensations. So within that substrate, so it's like I can tell where that sensation is relative to other sensations. And then I can tell where these sensations are because I can see where the location of where these sensations are. So then you do like a multimodal, like cross channel geolocating that's what like builds that construction of like, how can I tell where that sensation is? If you follow me. Yeah, thank you. Thank you guys. Yeah. Cool. Take care. See you next time.